Okay, so some of you in my video last week asked for a video about the SAT and some tips for that. So that's what this video is going to be on today. So I got a 1530 on the SAT. This was in March of my junior year. And the funny thing is I actually didn't really study for the SAT, partially because I was kind of lazy, but also because I had already taken the ACT at that point, so I didn't really feel like I needed the SAT. Maybe some of the studying for the ACT kind of carried over, but I didn't really do any special studying for the SAT. No practice, no prep books, nothing like that. So basically this video is going to be about how I was able to do that, get that 1530 on the SAT without really studying at all. Now, of course, please study. Don't do what I did. I mean, studying will only make you do even better than what I did. Okay, so anyways, today we're going to be talking about the reading and writing sections. I'm going to have another part 2, I guess, coming out next week about the math section and some more general tips. Today, let's start off with the reading section. So the reading section, I feel like was the hardest section for me because I mean, come on, those passages are so boring, but I still somehow got through it. So my first tip for you guys is before you even, start the reading section, I would recommend reading through the questions first. Just give it a quick skim for that passage, just so you can kind of get a good idea of what you're going to be asked for that passage, right? So once you just kind of skim through the questions really quickly, then you can go ahead and read the passage. This comes to my second tip, which is actually read the passage. I know some people like to, kind of skim through the passage really quickly to save time. But in my experience, it's much better to, read through the passage carefully once and get a good understanding of the passage than to, kind of skim it through, get a partial understanding, and then have to go back and forth between the question and the passage to answer each question. That not only wastes a lot of time, but also you don't get the full context of the passage if you're kind of just skimming through it really quickly. Okay, so now you're on the questions. So for the questions, there's a few different kinds of questions that I want to go through. So the first kind of question that you're going to see is kind of like the main theme question. This is going to be asking you what was the purpose of this passage, or what is the theme of this passage? And usually I save this question for last because that's kind of asking for the overall picture. You want to actually get into some of the details first, then maybe you can answer that whole main passage question. So let's put that aside for now. Now, another type of question you're going to see is these vocab based questions. So they're either going to ask you some kind of vocab word, or they're going to have a bunch of words as of choices. And sometimes you might not know what every one of those words means. And as somebody who didn't study, I mean, that definitely happened to me a lot. But what helped me through that was, seeing the words that I did know and then kind of using a process of elimination to see whether the words that I do know and recognize would be possible answers. And if they aren't possible answers, then I can just go ahead and cross them out. And at that point, I can go to that word that I don't know and kind of, pick that one if I don't think the words that I do know are the right answer. So definitely don't go ahead and just cross out that hard word immediately, because that could be the answer. But at the same time, don't assume that the hardest word is automatically the right answer, and actually go through those choices. Okay, so the third type of question you're going to have is these paired questions. And what I mean by that is there's 2 questions in this pair. The first question asks something about the passage, and the second question in the pair asks for line evidence for the answer to the first question. So my tip for these types of questions is always take advantage of the fact that they're pairs. So what I mean by that is you can just basically go through each of the choices in the second question of the pair, go to the lines in the passage, and then kind of pair it up with the choices from the first question in this paired question, right? So let's say A goes with A, that kind of thing. And you can kind of, write this on the side of your booklet. Now, if a certain answer doesn't have a corresponding pair in the other question, then you know that that choice can be thrown out, because you know that the answer to the first question must have corresponding line evidence as one of the choices in the second question. If there's no match, then it's not a possible answer. So using this method, I can really narrow down those choices and actually find something that fits well. Okay, so now you've answered the paired questions, you've answered the vocab-based questions, and now you're finally on those questions where they ask you, like I said before, for the whole theme of the passage or like the main purpose of the passage. And here you can actually use everything that you've just read. You maybe use the questions that they asked you as hints, because they're obviously going to ask you questions that they think are significant. So maybe use those questions as hints and try to come up with your answers for these questions. So overall, with the reading passage, I guess the most important thing to remember is that these questions are meant to have a single answer, and sometimes it might be confusing, like it might seem like all the answers could be possible, but you're looking for the best answer, and remember that there is only one answer. So remember that, remember the types of questions you're going to be asked, and remember to actually read through the passage well, so that you're not, wasting time going back and forth. Okay, so now we're gonna quickly talk about the writing section. So I said the reading section was my hardest section. For me, I felt like the writing section was probably one of the easiest sections. I mean, I've just always been, I guess, like pretty good at grammar, so it kind of comes naturally to me. But I guess my general tips for you guys is, first, I would recommend underlining the main subject and the main verb in each sentence. A ton of questions involve this, where there has to be subject-verb agreement, and sometimes they try to make it confusing with all these prepositions and all these different verbs that aren't the main verb. So you want the main subject, whether it's a single subject or a compound subject, and you want the main verb. And knowing these two things can really help you out with a lot of questions. My second quick tip for you guys is that semicolons and periods are generally interchangeable, and sometimes colons as well. So if you see like a semicolon, a period, and a colon all as choices in a single question, then you know that none of them can be correct because only one can be the correct answer. And since these are generally interchangeable, you can't pick both of them or all three of them, so then you know those aren't the answer. This can really help you use that process of elimination to get the right answer. And my final tip for you guys for the writing section is to read through the whole paragraph before you answer the questions that ask you to add a sentence or change the order of sentences or change the whole sentence, because you want to get that full context. And a lot of the times the sentences themselves are grammatically correct, so you can't just rely on simple grammar. You actually have to read the passage to find out whether the sentence would actually make sense in the passage. Okay, so those were my tips for the reading and writing sections of the SAT. I designed these tips so that they're generic, so that even if in the worst case scenario you don't get to study at all for your SAT, you can still use these tips and apply these tips and get the best score that you can on the SAT. Like I said at the beginning of this video, we're going to be doing the math section, the essay section, and some more general tips in next week's video. So make sure you guys are stay tuned to this channel by subscribing and liking this video so that you don't miss a single upload. Alright guys, so good luck on your SAT if you're taking it soon. Make sure to stay tuned for next week, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.